you have probably never heard of Timothy Caldwell. In fact, most history books never mention his name. But in 1867, doctors, professors, and even clergymen traveled miles just to look at him. And none of them could explain what they were seeing. Some said it was a medical miracle. Others whispered that it was something unnatural. And a few believed the truth was far more unsettling. Before we go any further, if you're drawn to forgotten stories that sit between science and mystery, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Night Archive. It truly helps the channel grow, and it ensures you don't miss the next story history quietly buried. Now let me take you back to the year 1867. The Civil War had ended only 2 years earlier. America was still rebuilding. Small towns were trying to find normal again. In a quiet farming community outside Dayton, Ohio, the Caldwell family lived a simple life. Thomas Caldwell worked long hours repairing wagons and farm equipment. His wife, Margaret, kept the household running. They were not wealthy. They were not powerful. They were ordinary, until their youngest son made them anything but ordinary. Timothy Caldwell was born in the winter of 1859. At first, there was nothing unusual about him. He was small, but healthy. He cried loudly. He slept often. The midwife assured Margaret that he was strong. But by the time Timothy turned 5, something began to change. He stopped sleeping. At first, it was subtle. Margaret would wake in the middle of the night and find him sitting upright in his bed, staring at the wall. Not crying, not afraid, just awake. She assumed it was childhood restlessness. But the nights stretched longer. Timothy would remain awake until sunrise. No yawning, no rubbing his eyes, no signs of exhaustion. During the day, instead of collapsing into sleep, he would follow his father outside and ask questions. Endless questions about tools, about weight, about sound, about how wood bent without breaking. Thomas began to feel uneasy. By age 7, Timothy was reportedly sleeping less than 1 hour per night, and some nights, not at all. Doctors were called. The first physician suggested nerves. The second suggested imagination. A third believed Margaret was exaggerating, but Margaret knew what she was seeing. Her son did not look tired. His eyes were bright, alert, watching everything. And then something even stranger began. Timothy started predicting small things, nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, but enough to unsettle the adults around him. One afternoon, he calmly told his father not to hitch the gray horse to the wagon. "The wheel will fail," he said quietly. Thomas dismissed it. The wheel had been repaired the week before. Half a mile down the road, the wheel cracked. No one was injured. But when Thomas returned home, he did not scold his son. He simply stared at him. Incidents like that began to stack up. Timothy would tell his mother which jar would fall from the shelf before it slipped. He would say which neighbor would arrive before a knock came at the door. Once he calmly told the town butcher that his scales were uneven. The butcher laughed until he measured them and found a slight imbalance. Word began to spread. By 1867, Timothy was 8 years old, and people were traveling to see the boy who did not sleep. A professor from Cincinnati visited first. He brought notebooks and measuring tools. He observed Timothy for 3 nights. Timothy never lay down. He remained seated in a wooden chair, quietly reading a borrowed arithmetic book. He solved problems faster than the professor could check them. He explained patterns in multiplication that startled the man. On the 4th morning, the professor admitted something unsettling. The boy showed no physical signs of sleep deprivation. No trembling, no confusion, no slurred speech. Nothing. Soon, physicians from as far as Chicago came to examine him. They tested his pulse, his reflexes, his vision, his hearing. Everything was normal. Too normal. One doctor attempted to force sleep using herbal sedatives common at the time. Timothy drank the mixture without protest. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. He remained awake, calm, watching. It was around this time that the town's attitude shifted. What began as curiosity turned into discomfort. Children were told not to play too closely with him. Church sermons began referencing unnatural gifts. Some families crossed the street when Margaret walked by. Timothy, however, never appeared bothered. He spoke gently, softly, often asking adults questions they could not answer. Why do we forget our dreams? He once asked a visiting minister. The minister had no reply. Another time, Timothy reportedly described the inside layout of a neighbor's barn he had never entered. When asked how he knew, he simply said, "I thought about it long enough." But the most disturbing incident happened late one autumn evening. A severe storm was forming on the horizon. Timothy stood at the window and told his mother that lightning would strike the old oak tree near Miller's farm. Margaret hushed him. Moments later, a bolt of lightning tore through the sky and split that exact tree in half. After that, fear replaced fascination. Some whispered that Timothy was touched by God. Others whispered something far darker. Yet through all of it, there was one fact no one could deny. He still did not sleep. Observers claimed he went nearly 11 consecutive days without any measurable rest. In an era when medical science was still primitive, this was beyond explanation. Even today, prolonged total insomnia leads to severe breakdown of the body and mind. Timothy showed none. But then, slowly, something changed. In the spring of 1868, his speech began to slow. Not dramatically, just slightly. He would pause longer between thoughts. His bright eyes seemed distant at times. Margaret feared that whatever force had kept him awake was finally demanding a price. One evening, Timothy told his mother something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "I think I am borrowing time," he said softly, "and I may have to give it back." 3 weeks later, Timothy Caldwell finally slept. Witnesses said he lay down on his bed without warning and closed his eyes. His breathing became steady, peaceful. Margaret wept with relief. But Timothy did not wake up the next morning, nor the next. For 3 days, he remained asleep. Doctors were summoned again. They monitored his pulse. On the 4th day, Timothy Caldwell passed away quietly in his sleep. He was 9 years old. The official cause of death was listed as neurological exhaustion. But privately, physicians admitted they did not truly understand what had happened. How could a child function for years with almost no sleep? How could his mind remain sharp while defying what science considered essential for survival? After his death, interest in the case slowly faded. There were no photographs preserved, no preserved medical files, just scattered journal entries and newspaper mentions. Some historians today argue the reports were exaggerated. Others believe Timothy may have had a rare neurological condition never properly documented. But even modern sleep specialists agree on one point: what was described should not have been possible. And perhaps that is what makes the story linger. Because Timothy Caldwell was not a showman. He did not seek attention. He did not profit from his condition. He was a quiet farm boy in post-war America who somehow existed outside the boundaries of understanding. Was it a misunderstood medical anomaly? Was it coincidence stacked upon coincidence? Or was it something science, even now, still struggles to measure? Stories like this remind us that history is not only wars and presidents. Sometimes it is a single child in a small wooden house, staring into the night while the rest of the world sleeps. And sometimes the questions left behind are more powerful than the answers. If this story made you think, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you believe Timothy's case could be explained by modern science? Or do you think something else was happening? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your theories are always fascinating to read. If you found this story intriguing, consider sharing it with someone who loves unexplained history. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to Night Archive so you never miss the next forgotten mystery waiting in the dark. Because somewhere in the past, there are stories that still refuse to sleep, and we're just beginning to wake them up.